Welcome to qnawire.
Let's first draw a picture to illustrate what's going on. We have at 0, 0, the center of a circle with an 8-yard radius. So that would mean 0, 8, 8, 0, negative 8, 0, and 0, negative 8 yards would be on the graph of the circle. Now the journey of the car begins at the point 80 and travels 34 yards counterclockwise. It stops then at some point XY. We do not know how far that is. We could find some basic things like if it goes a quarter of the circle, well, the circle's diameter is 16, so the circumference is 16 pi. And if we know that it went 34 yards, then 34 out of one circumference is about 2/3 of the way around. So maybe ends up over here at some XY. We want to determine the angle measure. That subtends this 34-yard arc. Well, in general, arc length is equal to the measure of the angle or arc out of 2 pi for one full circle times the circumference of the circle, which is diameter times the pi, or pi times diameter. So if we know the arc length is 34, and we know that the diameter is 16, the pi's would cancel, and we could multiply 16 over 2 is 8. And so then we would divide both sides by 8. It would be 34 eighths, or 4.25 radians. Which is what this is here. So 4.25 radians for part B. In part C, represent the numerical value y. Using trig functions, and determine the decimal approximation. Well, we can find this by thinking of a right triangle. And if we subtracted pi from if we subtracted pi from this angle, we would have 4.25 minus pi for the angle measure. And then this would be our y value and x value. We would also know that this would be 8 because that would be a radius of the circle. So we can say, for instance, to find the x coordinate, that's the adjacent. So we're using our right triangle trig, sine, cosine, tangent. And so x would be adjacent, and we know the hypotenuse, so that would be the cosine of the angle, which we said is 4.25 minus pi, is equal to x over 8. So it's 8 cosine of 4.25 pi. Make sure you're in radian mode. 8 cosine of 4.25 minus pi. Let's say 3.57. That would be the numerical value of y. Of x. They would both be negative though based on this position. I would just say 3.57 yards. And for D, I'm sorry. I actually just answered D. I found X first, but we needed to find Y first. So now I'm going to do C. C would be using sine, because Y is opposite, and we have the hypotenuse 8. So we can say that the sine of the angle, 4.25 minus pi, is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. So multiply both sides by 8 here, and we have the y. 8 sine of 4.25 minus pi is 7.16. So this position where he stopped is 7.16 of a vertical displacement and 3.57 yards for horizontal displacement.